I paid for my parents to go on a luxury trip, but they chose to take my sister instead. After they left, I canceled all the reservations. I treated my parents to a lavish one-week trip to Europe with me. When I picked them up to take them to the airport, they informed me that they had elected to travel with my jobless sister instead of me. My mother grinned. Your sister needed some rest, so we decided to take her. I did not say anything. When they arrived in Europe, they were treated to a great surprise. You're late, my mother exclaimed, stepping out onto the porch and lugging her bag behind her. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. It was 6:02 a.m. 2 minutes late, Mom, I replied, attempting a grin. I got out of the car to help with the baggage, but then I noticed my sister Lauren emerge from the house carrying her own suitcase. My smile froze. What's going on? I inquired, attempting to keep my voice calm. My mother turned to me, her face way too happy for the circumstances. Oh, Violet, we decided Lauren should instead of you. She's been so stressed lately and she really needs this trip. My chest tightened. Instead of me, Mom? I've been planning this for years. I paid for everything. She waved her hand dismissively as if I had simply brought up something unimportant. And we're grateful, sweetheart, but you're always working so hard. You can take another trip later. Lauren needs this right now. Lauren did not even have the decency to appear guilty. She only smirked and shifted her weight to one hip. Thanks for understanding, sis, she murmured, her voice dripping with phony sincerity. I looked at the two of them, my heart racing in my chest. My father walked out a bit later, avoiding eye contact and handing me his suitcase. This is unbelievable, I exclaimed, my voice shaking. This was supposed to be our trip, something for me to share with you. Well, it still is, my mother replied with a smile. Just with Lauren instead. Don't make this a big deal, Violet. Your sister really needs a break. My name is V and I've been working extra hours for the past 2 years to provide my parents with an unforgettable vacation. Flights, luxury hotels, guided tours. I meticulously organized every detail down to the last dinner reservation. But as I stood in my parents' driveway watching my sister enter the rear seat of my car, I realized something I had been ignoring for years. It didn't matter how hard I tried. Lauren was always number one in their eyes. I clenched my jaw, biting back the angry retort that was on the tip of my tongue, and said nothing. I contrived a stiff smile before opening the trunk. Let's get going then, I murmured, my voice flat. If they wanted to prioritize her over me, that's okay. They may accompany her, but I wasn't about to let them enjoy it. Except for Lauren's constant conversation, the drive to the airport was eerily quiet. Oh my gosh, Mom. Did you see that TikTok about Paris? I can't wait to go shopping there. Do you think we'll have time for that, or will the tours take up the whole day? My hands tightened over the steering wheel as I stared straight ahead, forcing myself not to say anything. My mother giggled quietly. Of course we'll have time. We'll figure it out when we get there. I bit the inside of my cheeks. They didn't appear to notice I wasn't a member of that we anymore. At one point my father cleared his throat. Thank you for driving us, Violet. I know this probably feels unusual. I looked at him in the rearview mirror. Unusual? That's an interesting way to put it, Dad. He did not respond. He simply shifted uncomfortably in his seat, maybe wishing he hadn't spoken at all. Lauren leaned forward from the back seat, her words harsh. You're not mad, right? I mean, this is really big of you, letting me go. I could never have afforded this on my own. I clenched my mouth and forced a tight smile. Of course, Lauren. Enjoy the trip. By the time we arrived at the airport drop-off zone, my patience had worn thin. My mom hugged me as I helped them unload their luggage. Thank you for understanding, dear. This means a lot to us, and Lauren, my mother explained. I nodded stiffly. Sure, Mom. Lauren smiled as she wheeled her bag to the entrance. Thanks, Violet. You're the best. I stood there watching them disappear into the terminal, my chest tight with anger and hurt. The ride back home was a blur and I replayed the conversation in my head over and over, each word cutting deeper than the last. This means a lot to Lauren. You're not mad, right? You're always working so hard. I parked in my driveway and sat in the car for a few minutes, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Then, without a second thought, I marched into the house, pulled out my laptop, and logged into every travel account I'd used to book the trip. Hotel reservations were canceled, tours were refunded, airline upgrades were denied. When I closed my laptop, A sense of satisfaction settled over me. They could explain themselves to the front desk staff in Paris. I was done being their doormat. The tightness in my chest began to ease as I stared at the confirmation emails piling up in my inbox. If they wanted to take Lauren instead of me, that was fine. But they would not be staying in five-star hotels or taking private tours on my dime. The calls began as soon as their flight landed. As I unpacked my suitcase, the one I'd packed so meticulously for a trip that was no longer mine, the irony was not lost on me. I hung up my clothes and neatly placed my shoes back on the rack. I groaned, picked up the phone, and glanced at the screen where my mother's name flashed along with multiple missed calls and texts. I unlocked the phone and read through the messages. "Violet, what's going on? The hotel won't let us check in. The reservation is missing. Call me right away. Violet, this isn't humorous. Fix it now." I couldn't stop myself from laughing. Did they really expect me to sweep in and save the day after what they had done? The phone rang again, this time with a call from Lauren. I let it ring until she left a voicemail. "Violet, this is so petty," she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. "We're stuck here because of you. You must contact the hotel immediately and resolve the issue." I rolled my eyes and deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest. I'd been their fixer for years, smoothing over every mistake and picking up the slack, but not anymore. I eventually decided to respond, if only to stop the torrent of calls. My mother's voice hit me like a tidal wave of hatred as soon as I picked up. "Violet, what have you done? The hotel claims the reservation was cancelled, and none of the trips are scheduled anymore." I let her yell for a bit before calmly responding, "I cancelled them." After a long, startled silence, she yelled, "Why would you do that?" "Oh, I don't know," I responded, my tone tinged with sarcasm. "Maybe because you chose to accompany Lauren on my trip. You're lucky I drove you to the airport. We thought you'd understand." "Understand what?" I inquired, my voice rising. Those years of saving and preparing were irrelevant because Lauren required a break. "Did you think my efforts were in vain?" "Guess what, Mom? I don't understand and I don't want to." I hung up before she could react and switched off my phone, tossing it on the couch. The calm that followed was beautiful. This trip had been the tipping point, but the cracks had been forming for years. Grace arrived abruptly that evening, carrying 2 cups of coffee and an evident air of inquiry. "I heard about what happened," she continued, placing the coffee on the table. "Your mom called me yesterday." Of course she had. My mother was always adept at enlisting sympathizers to coerce me into obedience. I inquired, taking a sip. Grace shrugged, a sneaky smile forming on her face. "I told her you were probably busy and would get back to her when you were ready." I laughed and shook my head. "You're the best." "No, you're the best," she continued, her tone becoming more serious. "Because you finally stood up for yourself. I understand how difficult that is, Violet. Do not let them drag you back down." Her words stayed with me long after she departed. Grace was correct. I'd spent far too long bending over backwards to please people who didn't seem to care about my efforts. It was time to halt that cycle once and for all. By the weekend, I had a strange sense of clarity. The anger was still simmering beneath the surface, but it was joined by something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. Freedom from their endless expectations. Freedom from being the family's fixer. Freedom to finally live on my own terms. But as expected, the silence did not last long. It was Sunday afternoon when I received a phone call from my father, which I decided to answer. "Violet," he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion, "your mother wanted me to call. She believes you will listen to me." "Go on," I murmured, reclining back in my chair. He sighed. "Look, things have gotten out of hand. Your mother is outraged, Lauren is enraged, and everything is simply a mess. But you are better than this." I stiffened, his words eliciting a new wave of rage. "Better than what, Dad? Stand up for myself. I refuse to let you walk all over me again." "That's not what I meant," he answered hurriedly. "It's just that you've always been the sensible one, the one who keeps everything together. This is not like you." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "You're correct. I'm not leaning over backwards to clean up your mess, which is unusual for me." He hesitated, and I thought he might finally understand my point of view. But then he replied, "You're punishing the entire family for one decision. Is that actually fair?" "Fair?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You want to talk about fairness? Was it fair that you and Mom thought I wasn't significant enough to join the trip I had planned? Was it right that you replaced me with Lauren? If I didn't matter. That's not what we were trying to do, he added defensively. We just thought Lauren needed it more. Of course you did. I yelled. You always believe she requires more. More attention, more support, more of everything. And I'm always asked to make sacrifices for her. Not anymore. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening, and he eventually muttered, I don't know what you want me to say. I don't need you to say anything, I said, my voice firm. I just need you to understand that I'm tired of being an afterthought. From now on I'll come first. Goodbye, Dad. I ended the call and set the phone down, my hands trembling for the rest of the day. I allowed myself to feel everything: anger, sadness, relief. It wasn't easy, but it felt like the beginning of something new. I wasn't the family's fixer anymore, and I wasn't going to be. They could figure out how to clean up their own messes. When my parents and Lauren returned, I was waiting for them in their driveway, sipping coffee and feeling remarkably calm as I watched their cab arrive. Lauren was the first to comment as they came out, dragging their baggage behind them, their expressions filled with tiredness and displeasure. Well, I hope you're happy, Violet, Lauren said. I arched an eyebrow and remained sitting on the porch swing. Happy about what? Our trip was a disaster, my mother exclaimed, waving her hand as if to dismiss the whole thing. We spent the entire week sleeping in dirty hotels and eating bad cuisine since we couldn't afford anything decent. And don't get me started on the tours. Lauren interjected, crossing her arms. Oh, there weren't any. Do you know how embarrassing it was to arrive and be informed there was no reservation? I took another sip of coffee, allowing their complaints to wash over me. Sounds rough, I finally responded calmly. But you wanted to take Lauren, remember? I'm sure you guys had a terrific bonding experience. That's not the point, my mother replied, her voice rising. You knew we couldn't afford everything you'd planned. You set us up for failure. I stood up and placed my mug on the table beside me. No, Mom, I didn't set you up for anything. I planned a trip for the three of us, something unique that I had been saving for years. You are the ones who decided to cut me out at the last moment. My father eventually spoke up, his tone calmer but no less accusatory. You didn't have to cancel everything, Violet. That was extreme. Was that it? I asked, folding my arms. Why should I have paid for a trip to which I had not even been invited? If Lauren needed it so much, you should have organized it yourself. You're lucky I didn't cancel your return flight. Lauren rolled her eyes. You're so dramatic. It's only money, Violet, and you're so entitled. I shot back, my patience now fraying. Do you know how much effort and sacrifice went into preparing that trip? Or do you simply believe that things will emerge for you because someone else takes care of them? They stood there, surprised and silent for a time. I've spent years being the responsible one, I said, my voice steady but forceful. The one who fixes things, prepares things, and ensures everything works well. And you've spent just as long taking everything for granted. That's not fair, my mother began. But I intervened by raising a hand. No, Mom. What is unfair is the way you treated me. You chose Lauren above me like you usually do. So I decided to stop being your doormat. You did not want me on the trip? Fine. But you don't get to reap the advantages of my hard work without me. I grabbed my bag from the porch swing and turned to leave. I'm glad you're safe, but don't expect things to return to normal. I'm finished. As I walked to my car, I heard them calling after me, their voices a mix of anger and guilt, but I didn't look back. The drive home from my parents' house felt strangely peaceful. For years, every visit had left me emotionally drained, but this time I felt lighter. I'd finally said everything I'd been holding in, and for once I wasn't concerned about their reaction. When I got home, I made a cup of tea and sat on the couch, replaying the confrontation in my head. They'd been so sure I'd fold that I'd given like always. But watching their stunned faces as I walked away was a reminder of how much I'd changed. It didn't matter if they were angry, hurt, or embarrassed. I was done living my life to meet their expectations. Grace called me. How did it go? She inquired, not bothering with pleasantries. I laughed, leaning back against the kitchen counter. Just as you'd expect. They're outraged. Lauren is pouting, and Mom is probably attempting to guilt me back into line. Grace snorted. Let her try. You have a backbone now, and I'm here to keep it in place. I smiled, appreciative of her unfailing support. Thank you, Grace. I mean it. You've been my rock throughout this. Anytime, she responded, her voice softening. So, what's next for you now that you're no longer the family fixer? That question had been swirling in my head since the confrontation. What was next for me? 4 years, so much of my energy had been spent attempting to satisfy my family and earn their approval. But now that I'd let go of that burden, the choices felt endless and a little terrifying. I don't know yet, I said, but I feel like I get to make the decision. Not them nor anyone else. Just me. Sounds like the start of something amazing, Grace commented, her voice bright with a smile. Over the next few weeks, I started making small changes that felt big in their own way. I redecorated my living room, swapping out my parents' hand-me-down furniture for pieces that felt uniquely mine. I spent weekends exploring local CA cafes and parks, things I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. And I started journaling, writing down my thoughts and dreams without filtering them through the lens of what others might think. Each small step felt like reclaiming a part of myself I hadn't realized I'd lost until one evening I sat down and opened the spreadsheet I'd used to plan the trip. The canceled reservations stared back at me, and I didn't feel a pang of regret but rather a surge of determination. That money had been meant for a once-in-a-lifetime experience and I wasn't going to let it go to waste. I closed the spreadsheet, opened a new browser tab and typed solo travel ideas. A few weeks after my parents' return, I booked a solo trip to Italy. It wasn't the same itinerary I'd planned for them, and it wasn't about proving a point anymore. This was for me, a chance to celebrate my independence and finally prioritize myself. I had never traveled alone before, but as soon as I stepped out of the airport and into the bustling city, I knew I'd made the right decision. I spent my days wandering cobblestone streets, marveling at ancient ruins, and indulging in meals at charming little cafes. There was no schedule, no one else to consider, just me and the freedom to do whatever I wanted. One afternoon, while sitting on the Spanish steps with a gelato in hand, I pulled out the journal I'd brought with me. 4 years I'd written about what I wanted to achieve, but those dreams were always wrapped up in making someone else happy. Now, as I wrote, the focus shifted. Learn a new language, start a small business, travel to at least 5 more countries. The list grew, each goal a reflection of the life I wanted to create, not the one I'd been expected to live. On my last night in Florence, I had dinner at a small family-run restaurant overlooking the Arno River. As I watched the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a deep sense of peace. This trip had been more than just a vacation. It was a turning point. I'd spent so much of my life trying to earn my family's approval, but here, thousands of miles away, I realized something important. I didn't need it. I was enough just as I was. When I returned home, my parents tried to reach out again, this time with softer tones and carefully worded messages. "Hope you had a nice trip," one text from my mom read. "Maybe we can all talk soon." I stared at the message for a moment before setting my phone down. I wasn't ready to respond, which was fine. This time it would be on my terms. I felt proud as I unpacked my luggage and displayed my treasures on my shelves. A week after returning from my trip, my mother called. This time I answered. "Hi, Violet," she said, her tone strangely soft. "How was your trip?" "It was amazing," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "That's nice to hear," she replied, hesitating as if to find the proper words. "We've been thinking a lot about what occurred. Perhaps we handled things terribly." The admission astonished me, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook just yet. "Poorly. You unexpectedly replaced me on a trip that I had planned and paid for." "Poorly is an understatement, I know," I said. "Your dad and we didn't realize how much it would hurt you and Lauren," she admitted. I asked, "Does she feel awful too? Or is she still blaming me for ruining her vacation?" "She's upset," my mother said, "but I think she knows she could have handled things better." I sighed, resting against the counter. "Mom, this wasn't just about the trip. It's been years of putting her first and expecting me to make up the difference. I'm not doing it anymore." "I understand," she answered after a pause. "We will strive to do better. We do not want to lose you." Her comments struck a chord deep within me, but I'd learned not to let guilt influence my decisions. "I'm delighted to hear that," I answered. "But it will take more than words to heal this. I want to see actual effort, not just apologies." "You will," she told me. "We'll give you the space you need, but I hope you'll let us back in someday." After the call, I had a combination of emotions. Relief that they were finally admitting their behavior and skepticism about whether they'd ever change. But when I sat down with my journal that evening, I understood something important. Whether or not they changed was not my duty. Over the following months, I maintained my strict boundaries, responding to their calls and texts when I felt like it but not going out of my way to solve things or smooth over tensions. Instead, I focused on creating the life I wanted. I signed up for a photography class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time or energy for, joined a local hiking group and even started planning my next solo trip. Each step felt like regaining another aspect of myself. One day I realized how far I'd come. I wasn't the person who went above and beyond for people who didn't respect me. Instead, I was someone who valued herself, established boundaries, and wasn't scared to stand up for what she deserved. I felt completely liberated,